Hey guys, I just finished a little homework and now it's time to get into our part 2 of Darwin Kid, The Getaway. Hey guys, before I start recording, I just want to give a little summary of what happened last week. Greg and his family had planned a trip to go on vacation during the Christmas break. But Greg really hates planes and he wants to stay home instead of getting on a plane for 6 hours to go somewhere. Now, let's get into the book. She said my carry-on bag was too big to fit in the overhead bin, so it had to go down below with the rest of the luggage. That was fine with me, because I didn't want to deal with my bag on the plane anyway. When I got on board, I was pretty impressed. The seats were a lot bigger than I expected, and they were covered in real leather. I asked Mom what row we were in, but she said we needed to keep moving. She said this was the first class section, and our seats were in economy. But the economy section wasn't half as nice as the first class. The seats were packed together and they barely had any cushioning. Mom said our seats were toward the middle of the plane, so we headed back there. But Dad hung back in the first class section. He said he got upgraded because of all his freaking flight miles that he'd catch up with us after we landed. Mom didn't seem happy about this news. She said it wasn't fair for him to be in first class while we were in economy. So she said we'd all take turns sitting in Dad's seat during the flight. But Dad said the rest of us weren't experienced travelers like him, and we wouldn't even know how to act in first class. Luckily, there were other passengers trying to board, so Mom and Dad couldn't get into a full-blown argument right there in the aisle. Dad sat down in his seat and we went to find ours. The rest of us were all in the same row. Mom, Roderick, and Manny sat on one side of the aisle, and I had the middle seat on the other side. Roger tried to get me to switch him so he didn't have to sit by Manny, but I was happy right where I was. I didn't have a whole lot of leg room, but other than that, it wasn't so bad. All the other passengers boarded after us, and people seemed pretty stressed trying to get their stuff into the overhead bins. So I was glad they took my bag at the gate. Everyone put away their bags and sat down in their seats. The pilot made an announcement that the doors were closing and the seat to my left and right was still empty. I couldn't believe my luck. As soon as we took off, I was going to stretch out across all three seats and get myself a good night's sleep. It was even better than being in first class. But right before the doors closed, one more couple got on board and they had a baby with them. I didn't think these people would be in my row because there were only two empty seats, but the baby sat in his mother's lap. See, if I were in charge of the airline, the rule would be one person per seat, because if this coupe had twins, it would have been completely out of hand. I asked these parents if one of them wanted to switch seats with me so they could be next to each other, but the mother said she liked the window and her husband said he liked to be on the aisle. Right after that, the pilot came on the intercom. He said that before we took off, there'd be a brief safety video to show us what to do in case of an emergency. I was already nervous about flying to begin with, and I didn't like hearing there might be an emergency, so when the safety video played, I paid attention. But as far as I could tell, I was the only person who did. Everybody else completely tuned out. The beginning of the video was just basic stuff like how to fasten a seatbelt. But after that, it got serious. The video's narrator said that if there was a loss in cabin pressure, oxygen masks would drop from the ceiling. Well, I don't know what cabin pressure is, but I didn't like hearing what we might lose. The people in the video didn't look bothered at all when the oxygen mask dropped down, though in fact they looked kind of happy about it. Then the video got even worse. The narrator said that in case of a water landing, we need to evacuate this plane. Now, I was really freaked out. I thought the whole point of an airplane was that it was supposed to stay in the air. The safety video said that there were emergency exits on the plane and people sitting in the exit rows would need to open the door so everybody could get out. The emergency exit was one row behind me, and I realized that people sitting there weren't paying attention to the video at all, so I got them to put down their magazines and listen up. The flight attendants didn't seem bothered that no one was watching the safety video. I figured they probably had their own exit, so if there was any trouble, I was going to follow them. The video showed the plane in the water with inflatable sides coming off the emergency exits, and they actually made it look fun. Then the video said our seat cushions doubled as flotation devices, and each one had a whistle attached to it. Now I had questions, so I pressed the button above my seat to get the flight attendant to come over. What I wanted to know was, if we landed in shark-infested waters, would it really be such a good idea to blow the whistle? It felt to me like we'd basically be inviting the sharks over for a free lunch. The flight attendant said I didn't need to worry because all the seat cushions were coated with shark repellent, so they wouldn't even come near us. I was pretty happy to hear that, but now I'm wondering if he was pulling my leg. I don't really get the point of the whistles though. It's not like anybody's gonna hear them if you're in the middle of the ocean. And if you're lucky enough to have a cruise ship pass by, believe me, those guys aren't stopping to pick you up. After the safety video was over, I felt exhausted and we hadn't even taken off yet. But a few seconds later, the plane started rolling down the tarmac. And the next thing I knew, we were in the air. I'm not gonna lie, I had my eyes shut during the whole takeoff. And I didn't even realize I was holding my breath until I almost passed out. Once we leveled off, the couple sitting in my row started feeding their baby. I was already nauseous from the takeoff and the smell of mushy peas didn't help things. I thought I might actually throw up, but I didn't know what to do. Then I noticed this white paper bag in the seat pocket in front of me, and I figured out that's exactly what it's for. The flight attendant already seemed annoyed with me, though, so I knew he wouldn't be too happy if I handed him a bag of vomit. Somehow I managed to get through the feeding without throwing up, but I wish I could say the same for the baby. After the lady cleaned it up, she reached into her bag and gave the baby a couple of toys to play with. One of the toys was a plastic hammer, and as soon as the baby got that thing with it, it started pounding on the window. I've heard that if a window on a plane breaks, everything inside gets sucked outside, and that really didn't seem like a good way to go. So when the lady's head was turned, I swiped the hammer from the baby and tucked it under my seat. Unfortunately, that set the baby off. It turned out nobody likes a crying baby on a plane, and everyone started shooting us dirty looks. Luckily, the lady had a bottle in her bag, and that quieted the kid down for a while. I was getting kind of hungry myself, so I pressed the button for the flight attendant and asked when we could expect to get fed, but he said meals were only for first class passengers, and he gave me a bag of peanuts to hold me over. That's when I remembered the snacks I bought before we got on the plane. But then I remembered that they were in my carry-on bag, which was stowed down below. I guess Mom must have been thinking about food too, because as soon as the pilot said we had reached our cruising altitude and we were free to move about the cabin, Mom unbuckled her seatbelt and went up to first class with Manny just in time for dinner. I felt something cold and clammy touch my left elbow, and then something else touched my right one. The guy behind me had taken off his shoes and socks and slid his feet through the spaces between the seats. So I guess this guy decided it was okay to use my armrest as his footrest? I was starting to feel boxing, and then the person in the seat in front of me tilted his seat all the way back, so it was just a few inches from my face. I tried to tilt my seat back, but I couldn't find the button to do it. So I called the flight attendant and asked him what the button was, but he told me the seats in our row didn't tilt back because they blocked the emergency row. Now I was starting to sweat. I thought I'd read a magazine to take my mind off feeling trapped, but the only thing in the seat pocket was a catalog for all this stuff no one needs. The people on either side of me were watching a movie, so I figured I'd turn my screen on and check it out. The movie looked like a comedy, but my headphones were in my bag and it was hard to understand what was going on without them. I changed the channel to see what else there was to watch. One channel had a show for little kids, and the baby next to me got interested in what was on my screen. And when I changed it to something else, the kid started bawling. When I changed the channel back, the baby stopped crying. I guess I would have been okay with letting the kid watch the show, but the screen was way too close to my face. And the colors on the show were so bright that even when I put on the eye mask that was in the seat pocket, I could still see everything that happened. When the show finally ended, the baby started crying again, but there was no way I was going to keep watching the show on repeat for the rest of the night. So I decided it was perfect time to take my shift up in first class. But Roger noticed I was trying to make a move, and he got out of his seat before I had a chance to. And once he was up in first class, I knew I'd have to wait a while before I could swap places with him. When Mom and Manny came back to their seats, I saw the door to the cockpit open behind them, and the pilot stepped out. I thought there might be some kind of emergency, so I pressed the button and asked the flight attendant what was going on. He said the pilot just needed to stretch his legs and use the bathroom, and the co-pilot had everything under control. I didn't like the fact that we were down to one pilot, even if it was just for a few minutes. Personally, I don't think two pilots is enough. Even when they're both in the cockpit, I guess the idea is that if one of them has a heart attack, then the other one is supposed to fly the plane. But I asked the flight attendant what happens if the other pilot freaks out and has a heart attack too. The flight attendant told me not to worry because these planes are so high tech, they can practically fly themselves. Well, I've heard pilot make a lot of money, so if what the flight attendant was saying is true, then this could be the career for me. Once the pilot got out of the bathroom, I figured it would be a good idea for me to go too. The only problem was the man to my right was asleep, and I couldn't get over the guy without him waking him up. So I went under him, and believe me, that wasn't a lot of fun. I walked toward the front of the plane, but before I even got to the first class section, the flight attendant told me that economy passengers have to use the bathroom in the back. The bathroom in the economy section was really small, but being in there was 100 times better than being stuck in my seat. It was sort of a tiny little apartment I had all to myself. Okay, guys, this is where we're going to end it for today. But I have a little question for you. Why do you think Greg is so scared of planes? Think about this answer until I do my next reading. Goodbye.